Okay, Carl and Heather, it's our last video. I'm sad about that. You two may not be, but I am. I really enjoy talking about these things with you guys. Our last video that we're going to talk about is sacrifice. So Jesus' third time that he predicts his death, again talks about sacrifice. And then probably my favorite, I might go as far as saying my favorite story in the Gospels. That's a massive claim.
Yep.
But it's about this unnamed woman in Mark's Gospel. I know she comes up in other Gospels, so we can probably name her. But in Mark's Gospel, she's not named, and she pours pure nard over Jesus. And it creates a bit of a scene, because this is seen as a waste. And I'll always remember, I remember reading that recently, being like, yeah, I would be one of those people that probably are critical or see it as waste, to be like, this could have been put to such better use. But it's this picture of sacrifice for us. I would just love to start this conversation. I'm excited where this is going to go for you, because I think this is very, very close to home, like where you've experienced greatest sacrifice in your life, and for sort of like the benefit of outcome, right?
Well, I don't think I've ever really experienced and I don't even think I knew what I was getting myself into when Johnny and I decided to start a family. But man, from the minute you get pregnant till, I guess, forever, your life is not your own. Your body is not your own. What women go through, when they even give birth, is just I didn't even realize. I remember 3 days after I gave birth to Jack, we were walking around the park, and I'll never forget looking at every mother with her child and thinking, you've given birth and you've given birth. And I thought I was just I'm surrounded by superheroes. Wow. I was just in awe. I could not believe this, the world's best kept secret, how strong women were. I can go on about that. But for the great, I'll never forget whenever I was giving birth to Jack, and I could hear what God was speaking over his life. And I knew this is a life that's going to bring glory to God. When Sonny was born, it was a night where it was a harvest moon. I had never heard of a harvest moon before, but all the midwives were talking about was oh, have you seen the harvest moon outside? Have you seen the harvest moon? I was stop talking about this harvest moon. I'm giving birth right now. But I felt the Holy Spirit say, you're giving birth to a kingdom harvester. Wow. And I knew this is what they carry. Now my life is about pouring into them to see where does God take them? How are they going to complete the calling that I know God has placed on their life? And that requires my whole life. It requires my sanity. It requires my everything. And I don't think, if you had told me before starting a family, I may have not. After I realized what actually goes into it. When I think of sacrifice, women, mothers, I give it all.
And you can picture your life without your boys,
no.
right? So there is that concept of that's the greatest sacrifice, and yet the most amazing reward. It's the most exhausting reward.
Well, you all know what it's like to hear a baby crying at night.
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's hard.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is.
Sacrifice your sleep. That's big.
Yeah. It is. I think that's a great example. Where would you go when you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's sort of one it's always a thing. So it's not that you what it looks like for me now probably looks different to what it looked like 10 years ago, because my life looks different now because I've been walking with Jesus for 10 extra years since that moment. But it's never something that changes, and I guess it comes up a lot of the time when the example is maybe fasting, the spiritual discipline or the spiritual practice of fasting. It's just one of these moments where you're sacrificing something so that you can hopefully, I don't know, it's not even that you're doing it to get something. You're doing it out of just, Lord, I'm doing this because I want to show you that I love you. I think sometimes we can, even with things like fasting, we can get it it's so easy to get it off by kind of 1 degree, where we kind of do it so that to kind of make God speak to us, or
right.
Or whenever we are doing it, I think sometimes there's just this there's just this little voice that's trying to knock you off the kind of true north that it should be. So you know, maybe you're fasting and after a few days you're feeling pretty good, like physically, and you're going, flip, like this fasting is great. And actually the thing that you started so that you could kind of walk more closely with the Lord or honor him actually becomes essentially like a diet.
Yeah.
Or, you know, if you are fasting, something that we should be doing kind of secretly, but if it's something that ends up getting brought up in conversation or talked about, there can nearly be this like pride that comes up that you're like, flip, I'm actually doing all right here. So I guess like in those moments of fasting, you know, that's something that, you know, it can't just be like a week, a year, a couple of weeks a year. But it's maybe something that it should be a regular practice for us. And it's in those moments that you realize maybe what's going on in your heart a bit more. And
So sacrificing food, or whether it's food or for some people social media, TV, you know, somebody once said to me they're fasting books, and I was like, I don't know. And then I realized like they literally read like 5 books a week, and so I was like, we're very different people. But so fasting is that like sacrifice of something to then gain greater intimacy with the Lord. Like you're opening yourself up to him in a sense. If the three of us were to read the story of the woman pouring pure nard over Jesus, we could very easily make that a legalistic way of it. So it's like once a year we're going to do the ceremony where we sacrifice by buying Hugo Boss and pouring it at the steps of our church as like a symbolic act. Like it can become legalistic, right? Like that's probably a bit extreme, but like we can just do it as like, okay, that's what you do, and you miss the imitation of Jesus, the intimacy with Jesus. How do we maintain a sacrificial lifestyle that stays formational and life-giving, as opposed to just becoming like, I sacrifice through gritted teeth, but actually we become people that want to sacrifice. We see the beauty of it. What would you say about that?
I think I was just reminded of, you know, the Pharisees who stand on the street corner praying loudly, bragging that, you know, you're talking about fasting, like, I'm fasting, I look good, and they're going to get the praises from man. But actually Jesus then says, you know what, when you're fasting, go into your closet, pray in secret, and the Father who sees you in secret will reward you openly. And so it comes back to what we've been talking about in these last few videos about like, where's your heart? Is it connected to Jesus? If it's connected to Jesus, it's about service, it's about sacrifice, it's about like being seen by God, and that's all that matters. When we're doing it for any other reason, you know, I could say I'm fasting, I could sacrifice something else, and it becomes almost like a bragging right, and it makes me look really good and really holy and or whatever. But I love that one desire is to please the Father. That's the one desire, and there's something so beautiful about that. And we think it's a small thing, but God doesn't think it's a small thing. To him, it's so precious, like that perfume that was poured out on Jesus, like it was something precious and valuable. And that goes to show like how God sees our time and our devotion to him. It's so valuable to him. It's so precious to him. And so, yeah, like what? And then like you experience the pleasure of God. And when you experience the pleasure of God, actually like the praises of man seem so small and so short-lived. And once you've tasted both, you're like, oh, this is so much better. I'm just going to go pray in private all the time, which is my dream because I'm an introvert, and like it sounds good to you too. Like great, I get to lock myself in a closet. Cool.
We have to come and drag you guys out of there.
Sorry, kids. Praying in my closet.
Oh, that is actually making it like the legalistic, and you miss.
Yeah.
Like you go, okay, sweet, I'm going to do this all the time. And it's like, well, actually, the greater sacrifice would be going and
Right. So that's my
serving
struggle
your
is then
kids.
going out and So there's balance in it, but it's a heart issue at the bottom. That's bottom line. It's a heart issue.
It's good. Thanks, Heather. What would you go, bro?
Yeah, very, very similarly. I think for me, another kind of practice that I've kind of started to do over the last few months has just been going for a walk with the Lord. And I open the conversation by saying, Lord, what do you want to talk about today? And allow him to kind of dictate the conversation. And what I find is that whenever I do that, there's some moments where it's like, he just talks about how much he loves me and he wants me to like recognize even more the kind of love that he has for me as his son. But there's other moments where he just goes, yeah, there's stuff that we're going to need to talk about here, that there's stuff in your heart that's not quite right, and I'm going to just put my finger in that today, and we're going to talk about that. And I guess then the sacrifice part comes off the back of that. You know, if there is stuff that's in my heart that maybe shouldn't be there, so often then, you know, the Lord doesn't just point to it and say that's a thing that's wrong, but actually he goes, there's a thing here, we're working on this together. And actually he maybe drops a little idea into my head that might be some sort of practice that could, I don't know, help me kind of work that out with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like, you know, an example, even like, so like finance potentially, you know, one where like maybe the Lord points to something and he says, actually, you're caring too much about money, you're worrying too much about that. And actually what he's inviting you to then is to go, okay, whenever you feel like I'm not going to provide for you and you feel like you need to kind of hold this stuff together, what I'm actually asking you to do now is that person. Yeah. You know, I want you to go and bless them. Like, that's not easy. And the Lord and I talk about it. Like
every day.
But, you know, it's just, it's little things like that, so in terms of that, what does it mean to sacrifice? It's not just you kind of go through your life necessarily, like you can do this, but it's not that you go through your life and you go, okay, what are the bad things? But actually it's like, you bring yourself before the Lord and you say, Lord, you know me better than I know myself. You know what's going on in my heart when nobody else in the world does. You know what's going on in my heart whenever I maybe don't even know what's going on in my heart. And you're the one then who can point to things that you're wanting to kind of change and redeem. It's just obedience to him and listening for his voice and doing what he's asking.
That's I love the concept. Like, so how do you start your walk? What do you say to the Lord?
What do we need to talk about
That's
today?
so good, man. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's a dangerous question.
It is a dangerous
It is a
I need
dangerous
to ask that
question.
more often.
Yeah. Let's finish with this then of I think you touched on a little bit with fasting of so this woman comes in and she pours the nard and it's unto Jesus, right? It's the picture of like when we sacrifice, also when we serve, when we suffer, when we deny ourselves, we're doing it unto him, not for personal gain, but we're literally doing it unto him. You know, it can become, we can make sacrifice self-centered, right? It can become, you know, our own way. Like, I think you talked there about fasting can become like a diet, and we just kind of gain from that. You can build a reputation off it. Others, you know, see you looking good. You talked a little bit about Jesus saying, "Go into the closet and close the door." How do we make sure sacrifice doesn't become about personal gain? Let's just land on that, right? Like, how do we keep it so that it's unto Jesus and not building our own reputations or kingdoms?
I think it's even what you were saying about what you asked the Lord at the beginning of your prayer, like, what are we talking about today? What do you want me to, what are you pointing at in my heart that needs fixing? A lot of the time I feel like, you know, even in times where I'm like repenting, I like beat around the bush of, you know, an issue that I know I need to talk to the Lord about this, but I know what he's going to, you know, and it's that hiding. And I think like, it's being open and vulnerable before the Lord and allowing him to search your heart. Because when I search my heart, I'm like, yeah, you can have this, you can have this, you can have this. But he's like, no, I want that. And I want that. So that's where faith really comes into play, because that thing can become such like you were saying, it can become your reputation, it can become your life, it can become your identity. Surrendering that bit of your heart, that's true sacrifice to the Lord, I think, because he wants the whole heart. When we're sacrificing out of our own thoughts and ideas, like, what are you doing it for?
That's great, Heather.
Yeah.
It's good. Carl?
Yeah. Whenever the Lord invites us to sacrifice something, he does it because he is our Father who loves us, and he's our Father who gives good gifts to his children. So he's not wanting to do it because he wants to like punish us, but actually he's inviting us to sacrifice because he knows what is better for us. So often whenever we are asked to sacrifice something, it can feel like something that's like really costly, and it can feel like a burden. But actually, once we do that thing, all of a sudden the Lord does something in our hearts and does something in our lives that make us go, this is what life feels like. This is what freedom feels like. And, you know, if you tried to tell me before I did it that that's what I was going to feel after it, I probably wouldn't believe you. But there's something about what the Lord, I don't know how he does it. He just does it. Whenever we are obedient to him and follow him, he just keeps showing us like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. And he shows us that as we sacrifice too. So
I think that summarizes our series. It's like, why on earth would we be people that are willing to suffer, that are willing to serve, that are willing to sacrifice? It's for the greater reward that we receive in him, which is beautiful. So thank you both for being examples of this to us and to the people around you of living your lives like that. Thank you for being willing to share your hearts with us over the last number of videos that we get to just capture this. And we just say, come Holy Spirit, as people listen, that we would all be transformed and be imitators of Jesus. And no matter what comes our way, we will follow him through every season. So thank you guys. Bless you both, and really appreciate you sharing.